中国太长时间，当你回家还有好几年，可要怎么继续努力？
You're all here? My man, how you doing?
只有一个在我的心里，每天都开心在中国。
First, on behalf of the University of Dayton China Institute and Dr. Wang Weiping, our Executive Director of the University of Dayton China Institute. Welcome everyone to come to UD China Institute. And also we want to thank Study at Lushu Lake to promote our activities on their WeChat platform. Today we have this, we are honored to have this opportunity to welcome all of you to come to this lecture, and especially our distinguished guest from University of Pennsylvania Fox Leadership Program. And Mr. John Davallo will give a presentation about global leadership, service, and learning for 21st century. So first, we welcome Mr. Joseph Tierney to introduce his colleagues.
Thank you. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here at the University of Dayton China Institute. I'm here with several of my colleagues from the University of Pennsylvania, who I will briefly introduce. The first is Dan DiIulio, who is a recent graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and it also serves as a special advisor to the Vice Dean for Liberal and Professional Studies. The second is Guoyun Wang, who is now the Assistant Director of Fox Leadership International. Also is Chuck Brucci, who's the Associate Director of the Fox Leadership Program. Nora Lewis, who is the Vice Dean for Liberal and Professional Studies at the University of Pennsylvania. And now I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor John DiIulio. Dr. DiIulio is the Frederick Fox Leadership Professor of Politics, Religion, and Civil Society at the University of Pennsylvania. He directs Penn's Fox Leadership Program for undergraduates and also its Religion Research Program. He grew up in Philadelphia and was the first member of his family to attend college. He majored in economics at Penn and received his PhD in political science from Harvard. After teaching at Harvard, he spent 13 years at Princeton University as a professor of politics and public policy. Over the last quarter century, he has won several major academic and teaching awards. Outside academic life, he has developed programs to mentor the children of prisoners, provide literacy training in low-income communities, reduce homicides in high-crime police districts, and support inner-city Catholic schools. He has been a research center director at the Brookings Institution, the Manhattan Institute, and Public-Private Ventures. In 2001-2002, he served as the first director of the White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. He is the author of a dozen books and several hundred articles. His books include Bring Back the Bureaucrats, which was published by Templeton Press in 2014, Godly Republic, a centrist blueprint for America's faith-based future, and the leading textbook in American government in the United States. So please join me in welcoming Professor DiIulio.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you all. And first, let me thank our wonderful hosts here at the University of Dayton China Institute, Dr. Weiping. It is an honor to be here at this remarkable facility. I only wish we had such a beautiful facility in West Philadelphia, the University of Pennsylvania. So you're all very, very fortunate, those of you who are students here, to be at this remarkable campus in this remarkable place. So we thank you very much for hosting us. We're very honored to be here. I also I see already in the audience many of our former students from the University of Pennsylvania summer program, our Jesse program. And we're looking forward to the reception following this session where we can reconnect with you. And I also know that here present this evening are several students who are going to be with us in Philadelphia in the summer for the second installment of our Jesse program at the University of Pennsylvania. So we look forward to meeting you at that reception as well. I am really, as I say, greatly honored to be here with you. And my topic this evening sort of has a long title to it, as you heard, but it's about global leadership and governance and engagement, and how cultural and educational exchange programs, a new generation of cultural and educational exchange programs, are needed and could be productive in forging ever better relations between China and the U.S., between the great Chinese people and the great American people. So let me begin by essentially discussing the evolution of my own interest in this topic. And if you will forgive me a little bit by way of introduction for being somewhat autobiographical in discussing this, because this is really, standing before you, I am a most unlikely person to be standing before you this evening for several reasons. The first is that I am not an expert and do not pretend to be an expert on international affairs. The second is that I am not an expert and do not pretend to be an expert on China. Now, I have spent a lot of time learning about and talking to people, Chinese nationals, friends from China, reading up. Last fall, I had a medical leave from Penn, so I had a little time to sit back and reflect and read, and I did most of my reading about China. But I'm not here this evening as an expert on China or international relations. Also, last May was my first trip to China, so this is only my second time in China. Last May, I took a more or less typical 10-day, 3-city tour of China, along with my wife and 2 of my 3 children. And there were 2 wrinkles to that trip, 2 things about that trip that made it a little less typical than the typical 10-day, 3-city tour of China for Westerners. The first is that we were on a tour with a tour company that has always catered to Chinese nationals. So most of the people on the tour were not Westerners or Americans. They were actually Chinese nationals who were seeing Beijing for the first time, or other parts of China for the first time. The second thing was that I was on that tour with Danny, my son, who is here with us tonight, from whom you'll hear more in a bit. He majored in East Asian languages and civilizations at the University of Pennsylvania. And so this trip really was to celebrate his early graduation from Penn as someone who had taken East Asian languages and civilization study and had learned a fair amount of Mandarin. So he also saved me a year of tuition by graduating a year early. So that's what I was really celebrating on that trip. So I had those 2 differences, but in that trip in May, just last May, within the last year, like a lot of people, I think, who come to China for the first time, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the culture. I fell in love with the history. I fell in love with, I understood finally why Danny was so interested in East Asian languages and civilizations, in China in particular. Then last July and August, it so happened, I had the great honor to co-lead a program at the University of Pennsylvania for 46 students. 46 students from Jiangsu province, and it was through the Jesse program, the Jesse Provincial District program, and it was just the most remarkable teaching experience of my 34 years of teaching. And I'm looking at some of my former students right now as I say that, and they know, I hope they appreciate what I mean by that, because that experience, 4 weeks of residential living, 4 weeks together, learning about governance and society and leadership in the 21st century, looking at various issues of energy policy, poverty policy, and so forth, and more so outside the classroom, outside the day-to-day classroom instruction, and more so in the interstices of the program, in the evenings and on the weekends. I just had such a tremendous experience and learned about my Chinese national students, their tremendous intelligence, their tremendous heart, their tremendous desire for real, lasting, and long-term relationships. And then just this past November, coming off my May experience and the July-August 4-week experience with our wonderful Jesse students, our 46 undergraduates from Jiangsu province, Last November, the Fox Leadership Program, which is the program that I serve as faculty director at the University of Pennsylvania, we received a wonderful gift from our wonderful benefactor, Robert Fox. We're dedicating all of that new gift, the $5 million, to international efforts. And we're going to be doing work and fellowships in the European Union, also service learning trips in Africa, which is something the Fox program has sponsored in the past. But our main focus, our primary focus, is China, is forging a new generation of cultural and educational exchange programs with and through other universities, both in China and America, focused on China. And in that context, I want to surrender the podium briefly to my dear colleague, the Vice Dean of the College of Liberal and Professional Studies at the University of Pennsylvania, Vice Dean Nora Lewis. Vice Dean Lewis, unlike me, is a world traveler. She has been to China many, many times. She travels all over the world, and she leads our remarkable College of Liberal and Professional Studies, which is the sponsor of our summer program with Jesse, and the sponsor of a half dozen or more graduate professional programs in a wide range of fields. So I'd like to call her up to say a few words about our efforts at the University of Pennsylvania. We spent this past Monday together in Beijing for the opening of the new Penn Center, the Penn Wharton Center in Beijing. So the University of Pennsylvania is making a major commitment to China and to working and collaborating with other colleges and universities. So Dean Lewis, if you would please take the podium. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you very much. I would say I have to make one tiny correction. I think 3-4 trips to China is not many.
Okay.
But I am looking forward to doing many in the future. So I want to add my own deep thanks and appreciation to our colleagues at the University of Dayton China Institute for hosting us here tonight. And it's just such a beautiful and amazing center. We had the opportunity to speak briefly with a couple of the students here. So I'm really impressed with what you're doing and look forward to learning more about that. As Professor DiIulio mentioned, on Monday, March 10th, the University of Pennsylvania launched the Penn Wharton China Center in Beijing. We celebrated 2 days of academic panels and presentations from University of Pennsylvania faculty and provosts, deans, faculty, and scholars from institutions around China. That opening launch is going to be followed by 100 days of programming in the center of various kinds, academic conferences, educational programs, workshops. There were 70 Wharton MBA students there taking a class this week, and 80 dental professors from across China there taking a continuing education program. There's going to be 100 days of programming, and in September, the president of the University of Pennsylvania, Dr. Amy Gutman, will be coming for a grand opening celebration, and she will be joined by the presidents of many of our partner institutions across China. As John said, the opening of the Penn Wharton China Center is really one sign of the university's deep commitment to broader and deeper engagement with China, to extending our existing collaborations and partnerships. The center is really intended to be a physical sign of that commitment and a sort of home base for engaging, bringing our faculty to meet with their colleagues to push the boundaries of research in a number of different fields, to be a place where we can do educational programming with our partner universities and organizations in China. But it's not the only place that we'll be engaging across China, and not the only way we'll be engaging. Our summer program that we are doing with the Jiangsu Provincial Department of Education, the Jesse program, is one example of bringing students from Jiangsu to the Penn campus. But we also hope to bring Penn students here to China, hopefully to Jiangsu and other places. And also to put together collaborations that are virtual. There's wonderful technology in the center, such as the technology you have here, that will enable students without leaving their campuses to engage with each other across the boundaries of time and space. So it's a very exciting moment for us at Penn. We look forward to many new opportunities to work with China, to learn about China, to learn from China. And for many of you in this room, I hope will have an opportunity to come to Philadelphia and visit with us. So thank you again for having us, and I look forward to talking with some of you at the reception afterwards.
Thank you, Dean Lewis. The reasons to go down this path, I think, are very many. Some of them are obvious. It's the global importance of the China-U.S. relationship. It's the fact that more than any other relationship, bilateral relationship in the world in the 21st century, the relationship between China and the United States will affect not only the fates of the great peoples in each of those two great countries, but also the fates of people all across the globe. Second reason to go down this path is simply you can sort of unearth the reason by asking a question. If the question is, under what, if any, conditions can relations between China and the U.S. be improved, and how, if at all, can we foster those conditions? And the second question is, do you think we would be better off or worse off if, over the next 30 years, we had 300,000 or 400,000 people in China and the U.S. who not only knew each other generically, but knew each other person to person, had experienced real, deep, fundamental ties through academic, university, college-based life, and had sustained those relationships over time? Do you think that the relationship, the possibility of improving, creating the conditions under which China and the U.S. could forge and sustain better relations into the mid-21st century and in the end of the 21st century? I think the answer is obvious. It's really a rhetorical question. Of course we would be better off. Does it mean all our problems would be averted or solved? No, but certainly those problems would be mediated in ways that would be far, far better than if we lacked those kinds of deep and abiding engagements and ties that are person to person, that come out of engagements with young people during their young adult years. But there's another and more general reason for thinking about going down the path of forging a new generation of cultural and educational exchange programs with China and the U.S. And this reason basically goes to the whole question of what it means to engage civilizations, have them engage each other. And here I'm going to basically plagiarize. Not something you're supposed to do in academic life, but I'm going to do it. Now I'm going to do it expressly so it doesn't make it plagiarism, at least by the way, U.S. standards. I'm going to read to you directly from a speech. And the speech is one that President Xi Jinping gave on March 27, 2014. And the title is, Exchanges and Mutual Learning Make Civilizations Richer and More Colorful. Okay? I'm not going to read you the whole thing, don't worry. I'm just going to read an excerpt. But I think this summarizes the reason for such programs better than anything I could say on my own. So, in brief, quote, the President said, civilizations become richer and more colorful through exchanges and mutual learning, which form an important driver for human progress and global peace and development. To promote exchanges and mutual learning among civilizations, we must adopt a correct approach with some important principles. The first principle is to understand that civilizations come in different colors, and such diversity has made exchanges and mutual learning among civilizations relevant and valuable. A civilization is the collective memory of a country or a nation. A single flower does not make spring, while 100 flowers in full blossom bring spring to the garden. Be it Chinese civilization or other civilizations in the world, they are all fruits of human progress. Exchanges and mutual learning among civilizations must not be built on exclusive praise or belittling of one particular civilization. As early as over 2,000 years ago, the Chinese people came to recognize that it is natural for things to be different. Second, civilizations are equal, and such equality has made exchanges and mutual learning among civilizations possible. Third, civilizations are inclusive, and such inclusiveness has given exchanges and mutual learning among civilizations the impetus to move forward. The ocean is vast because it refuses no rivers. All civilizations are crystallizations of mankind's diligence and wisdom. Every civilization is unique. History proves that only by interacting with and learning from others can a civilization enjoy full vitality. If all civilizations are inclusive, the so-called clash of civilizations can be avoided, and the harmony of civilizations will become a reality. As the Chinese saying goes, radish or cabbage, each to his own delight. On the planet, there are more than 200 countries and regions inhabited by more than 2,500 ethnic groups with a multitude of religions. Can we imagine a world with only one lifestyle, one language, one kind of music, or one kind of costume? Finally, we should draw wisdom and nourishment and seek spiritual support and psychological consolation from various civilizations and work together to face down the challenges around the globe. Imagine, if you will, sort of a 4+1 master's program. So you do your 4 years of your undergraduate program and then a 1-year master's degree. Imagine that these programs are hosted by a single university. So a single American university might host one, a single Chinese university might host one. And imagine that each cohort of this master's program, and it could be a master's in a field like mine of political science or public administration, public affairs, or it could be something in a more technical subject, right? It could be something in healthcare, it could be something in a number of different graduate professional fields, okay? So, without regard to specific content, imagine the program has as few as 30 students, but that 15 of those students are Chinese nationals and 15 are Americans, okay? And imagine that these programs operate so that one semester, in effect, half the program is sponsored in America, and the other half of the year, the other half of the program is sponsored in China. And imagine that the programs are structured so that these Chinese and American students live in community, what I would call intentional international community, okay? Live together, work together, study together. And further imagine that as their sort of capstone or sort of master's thesis, exercise, okay? Again, whether it's a technical field or a less technical field, imagine that they work in common on a given problem. So maybe the focus, say in a field like mine in public policy, public affairs, might be elder care. China has a large and growing population of old people and a relatively small population of young people to take care of those old people. And guess what? In the United States, we have the same problem. Not quite, I think, as pronounced as the inverted pyramid in China is going to prove to be, but it's a significant problem. How do you use governmental, public, private? That's a problem in both countries. But imagine the Chinese national in the relationship works on the American problem, and the American works on the Chinese problem, and they converge and come together and write the duo, the dynamic duo, writes their final capstone project or exercise together, okay? And imagine that in this sort of program, they come to the end, they graduate together, and then the big payoff, the really big payoff, is what happens over the next 30, 40 years. That the 30 people, the 15 Americans and the 15 Chinese nationals, and the duos that work together, stay in contact. Now, I've learned about all kinds of things the last year, stepping outside my comfort zone, like WeChat, Weibo, and the internet. I don't know anything about that stuff. I'm an old man. I don't know anything about that stuff. But I have learned about these things, the way in which social media would enable these relationships forged up close and personal, person to person, problem solving, mutually respectful, long view taken, to remain in contact, whether they go into business or government or media or what we in America call the nonprofit sector or intersectoral life. Imagine. Now, let me go from the mustard seed to something that happens, right, with a mustard seed. Imagine that you had, I'm not a mathematician, so forgive me if I get this wrong, but imagine you have one university doing 30 students. Imagine you could get 250 American universities and 250 Chinese universities doing these programs. Maybe they're cross-lacing them, doing them together. So imagine you had 500 universities, 250 in America, 250 in China, doing these programs. You'd be producing 15,000 people a year. 15,000 people a year, half American, half Chinese. Do that over 20 years and you get 300,000 people. Imagine the difference in China-US relations, understanding, because things are going to happen. There are going to be problems. There are problems. There will continue. One thing you can be sure of, there will be adversity. There will be problems, rest assured. Imagine the difference it might make. And imagine just the intrinsic good the intellectual and civic and moral good that would come if over a 20-year period you could have 300,000 people, 150,000 Chinese nationals, 150,000 Americans having those kinds of relationships. Oh, maybe they're in the key positions in government or business. Maybe they're not. Doesn't matter. We're not talking about they're all these elites, who know each other. Maybe they're more or less average citizens too. Not only for elites or the well-off, right, for these relationships. Imagine the difference it might make over time. So the question is, when do you get started? If it takes 5 or 10 years to get up to the level where you're producing 15,000 graduates a year, you were able to do that, say, by 2025. Give yourself 10 years of runway to build it. By 2045, you could get there. You say, well, that's a long time away. Well, that's why you should get started now. That's why you should get started tomorrow. In the absence of these kinds of relationships, I really do believe that the future of China-U.S. relations will be much less bright than it otherwise could be. So that's, again, that is not the answer. That's not the program. That's not what I've asked my dean to sign off on yet. But that sort of illustrates the kind of the spirit and the letter, so to speak, it illustrates of the kinds of cultural and educational exchange program, which is very different from you come and then you go home. Or it's a short-term thing and there's no follow-up or follow-through, Thinking of the American universities, thinking of their Chinese students as their students, as we think of our Jesse students, many of whom are here tonight for the receptionist to follow. Very different approach to the typical cultural and educational exchange program. So let me conclude, and then I'm going to turn the podium over to my wonderful colleague and our new, as Mr. Tierney, our executive director, announced, our new assistant director of the Fox Leadership Program, leading our efforts on Fox Leadership International and leading our efforts most especially here in her native land, China, Flora Wang. But let me conclude by just saying a few additional things in this regard. I happen to be a Roman Catholic, as many of my Jesse students know. And this University of Dayton, of course, comes out of that tradition of the Jesuits. The Jesuits were the first Westerners in China. But when St. Ignatius of Loyola came to China, he did not come essentially to do proselytizing and conversion as such. He came to learn and serve. He came to serve and learn. And the Jesuits have had that tradition pretty much for the last 450 years. 450 years makes you old in the West and new in China. So we've been around 450 years. I've hung out a new shingle here in China. That is the spirit, I think, that has to underwrite all cultural and educational exchange. That sort of Jesuit spirit, not the religious aspect of it, but the civic aspect of it. That you engage people in a way that is, you come to learn and serve and learn on both sides of the relationship. That is what, in effect, works. But way before the Jesuits sort of started 450 years ago, and in fact 500 years before Jesus Christ, was Confucius, who said, wherever you go, go with all your heart. Wherever you go, go with all your heart. More important, ultimately, than the design of cultural and educational exchange programs. More important, ultimately, than the particular funding streams or the particular structures. More important, ultimately, than the status of the universities that may be involved, will be the heart, the affect, the spirit of the people who decide they want to take these steps for themselves and for future generations, for their posterity. Wherever you go, go with all your heart. But I would not even begin to attempt even on a small scale, such an effort, were it not for my absolute confidence in the millennial generation in China and the millennial generation in the United States. Now, the millennial generation is much maligned. Old people like myself have all kinds of nasty, negative things to say about the millennial. You're hooked on gadgets, you have short attention spans, what else? There's all kinds of negative things that are said about the millennial generation in both countries. And I think some of those things may have some validity, but I think that what is missed in that is that the millennial generation in China and in America can be the next greatest generation. if they can find each other and find within themselves the strength to transcend not only their parents' and grandparents' technologies, but their parents' and grandparents' way of relating to other people in other cultures. That would be a magnificent achievement, and I'm quite confident that the millennial generation and its leaders in both countries, both nations, will evolve into their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Some of you are thinking, oh, I don't want to think about myself in your 50s. I would like to think about myself in my 50s, when we were young. And you will find yourself in a situation where you will be able to lead, not follow, and change things. And I am confident in the millennial generation, and I am confident in it because I know certain millennials in both nations. And I want to bring one to the podium now to say a few words by way of conclusion. Our aforementioned new assistant director at the Fox Leadership Program, a native of Shanghai, Ms. Laura Wong. Laura.
Thank you, Professor DiLulio, for introducing me. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank again University of Dayton China Institute for having us here today. And I'm very delighted to be here to say a few words about my new responsibilities. And I'm very looking forward to any future opportunities to collaborate with any universities in China and to further our international educational cultural exchange program. And so actually, I haven't started my job yet because I'm still studying in the University of Pennsylvania. But I have already did my first thing for my new job. I designed a logo for our new Fox Leadership International. So I would like to hear any comments you may have on our new logo. And so, as I said, I'm still studying in the University of Pennsylvania. So I feel if, in terms of international cultural exchange, I'm both recipients of the International Cultural Exchange by myself. And last summer, I had the opportunity to join the JESSE program and to be the TA on the program for a month. So at that role, I'm a facilitator of the international exchange. So I feel like I have been at both sides of the international education exchange. And I feel it's my greatest honor to be able to see the younger generation, much younger than me, to be able to receive the education in America and be very passionate about their future and the future of America and China. And I'm sure if we're talking about international education exchange, you will probably think a lot of similar programs. And I'm sure the Fox Leadership International is not the first and will not be the last. But reflecting on my own experience, what Professor Li has already done is something unique because he didn't treat like Chinese students or international students as purely language learning students, but he treated all the international students, especially Chinese students, as the future leader and who has very important impact on the future of the world and of the relationship between China and America. So that's a very important and unique component of the Fox Leadership International, and we are very looking forward to any future opportunities to further our own commitments. So now I would like to bring some entertainment to you. So next, we're going to welcome our music star. He's actually here today, and he's going to say a few words and probably perform a little bit live. So let's welcome Danny DiLulio.
大家好，我想练习我的中文，所以我会说一下。我叫杜丹尼，我的英文名字就是 Danny。我去年从英大毕业，所以我在那儿学了3年的中文，因为我的专业就是东亚语言和社会。 我很小的时候就对中国文化、中国社会有兴趣，但是我上大学的时候，最大的选择学中文的原因，就是我知道美国没有那么多想学中文的学生，真没有那么多真理解中国文化、中国人的看法的人，所以因为在21世纪，我觉得中国和美国是世界上最重要的国家，所以我觉得这个情况，这个在美国的情况非常不好的，非常不好。所以在未来，我有一些目标，一些梦。第一个就是我想在中国花很多时间。在未来，我想来这里工作一下，学习一下。然后，因为你们知道，我喜欢唱歌、弹吉他、写自己的歌曲、自己的中文歌曲。我想我的目标、我的梦就是，我想用音乐来帮我们两个非常好的、非常有意思的国家。多理解相互，所以今天晚上我想为你们谈一下你们可能已经听过的歌曲叫做《Hey Jude》，你们听过吗？但是今天晚上我想唱中文的歌词。
一直到很过时。
thank you very much for having us. Again, we want to thank our wonderful host at the University of Dayton China Institute. We want to thank all of you for coming. And now we have a reception with, we have some shirts for you out there. The Fox Leadership Program never goes very far into the world without having a t-shirt. So we have t-shirts for everyone, I believe, waiting outside with our beautiful new symbol of our Fox Leadership Program. And I think the color coding for size is out there, so we'll figure it out. Obviously, they don't have a 4X for me, so or I'll be wearing it. So thank you again very much, and we look forward to seeing all of you at the reception. Bless you. Thank you tonight. You're all here? My man, thanks so much. Hey, how are you? I get to wait to come to. How are you?
A large will have to give you one. Large is outside.
So I got that over prepared. Expression, a blessing in disguise. It means something bad happens, but it turns out it's a bad thing that happens. So getting sick was a blessing in disguise because it enabled me to take time and think a little bit more and reflect and decide what I really want to do in the next 5 years, however time I have left. So my professional life, I decided to get I'm even going to learn Mandarin. Yeah, very little I'm going to learn, but I'm going to learn. I'm going to try to learn. I'm committed. The charity's even going to learn some Mandarin. And he has food. More important.
Well, they have to get in line. I can't bring one here. We have a nice seminar. The food is to the left as you go out. And then when you bring it back this way.
For you guys, just for you guys. Okay? Yeah. So go get your food and we'll see you in the room. Okay? All right.
Tell Bill you'll help me. 情丝最秀丽在中国，未来真光明在中国，在中国，烦恼都记在中国，在中国。 中国，在中国，景色最秀丽在中国，在中国，未来真光明在中国，在中国，烦恼都忘记在中国，在中国。 每天都开心在中国，在中国，景色最秀丽在中国，在中国，未来真光明在中国，在中国，烦恼都忘记在。